Good. Well, thank you very much for having me back. I'm going to be relatively rapid today because I have to run and do what I'm supposed to do and constantly be flying somewhere. So what I want to do is really, again, as I like to do, is set the scene, allow you to think about Russia at FSU, get some questions ready, and hopefully learn something as well. I mean, I think it's a fascinating place, but as David said, appetite is low, and it's a challenging place. And I remember writing a big piece on the region back in 2009 and thinking there's a lot of opportunity, and here I am in 2013 thinking all those things we discussed back then are still to play out. So whether it's exploration or big fields to start producing and to see that value coming through some companies and some share prices, takes a long time to materialize. So I think that was a good point David made, and it's one of the problems. But what I like to do is talk about production, where it is today, where it might go, exploration, what's been happening, and some of the opportunities that are available to all of us here. So, a bit of context, this is the entire FSU region. This is oil and gas combined, red gas, green for oil, and really putting it together saying it's still a big part of the world supply of oil and gas. It's about 20% of global oil and gas production. It's kind of split half and half here. And the interesting thing is, through the 1990s, back up into 2010-11, we're back beyond the 1990 peaks. We had a little dip there in red and gas in the recession. Gazprom kind of pulled back to natural gas, but ultimately it's bounced back and other players are adding more gas. So ultimately, the whole region has reached a new peak of 26 million barrels of oil equivalent per day of oil and gas. So that's, nearly a fifth of global supplies. The question is, it used to be a quarter of global oil supply back in the 1990s. Today it's 19%. Does it go up? Does it drop to 15% over the next 10 years, et cetera, et cetera? In terms of looking at it, I'd like to therefore focus a little bit on Russia through the rest of this presentation. The good thing about it is there's a lot of very good data. And obviously it's a big part of global supply, a big part of the oil price. 10 million barrels per day of oil production, that's 11% of global supply. It's a critical factor. If this goes up or down, it's going to affect everyone. It's going to affect the oil price, which affects your gasoline, your petrol price, et cetera, et cetera. To give you a sense of what's happening here, the red line is 2013. We're halfway through the year. They're still adding a little bit of supply, so it's up another 1% roughly year over year through the first 6 months of this year. And apart from the bottom line, which was 2008, when it kind of stumbled at the beginning of the year and was a bit flattish, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, it's incrementally adding this kind of 1% level. So that's phenomenal on a 10 million barrel per day base of production. And some big companies, if you're Exxon or Shell or whoever, half that volume output level, and they really struggle to grow. And here you have double that volume, and actually 4 or 5 companies controlling it, still managing to push out 1% growth. It surprised me, because I think it's a very challenging production base, as I like to talk about here. And I think it's sometimes worth just not looking at the top line numbers, but digging into a little bit of the data. And this is really the last, it's each company's production. I just want to look at this column, which is year to date, year over year volume. So Russia's added 113,000 barrels per day of production growth this year so far. And it just allows you to see where it's coming from if you tabulate it in this form. And I just want to look at Rosneft here at 64 out of 113, or then drop down to Gazprom at 50 out of 113. So you can see who's doing it, who's doing the hard work here in terms of Russian production. It's Rosneft. And if you go down to the bottom part, you'll see this field called Vancouver, which is up 87,000 barrels per day of oil this year. So that's a big driver, a big element of the growth. And Gazprom, that's condensate, so that's strictly, it's not oil, and it's coming out of their natural gas fields because of the cold weather we had in some of the months at the start of the year. They produce a lot of gas, and then naturally they co-produce some condensate, giving the 50 number. So I think that's always useful to know. Is the whole base growing? Is everyone doing same level of work, or are there particular reasons why it's growing and how do you think about those going forward. And I think that's why I think we shouldn't expect it to keep creeping up 1% a year for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Because I think Bangor Field, if anyone knows it in detail, is kind of has reached this plateau level. Gazprom is really producing more or less depending on the natural gas requirements in Russia or Europe. So I think it is. If you didn't have that, the numbers would look very different in 2013, and the oil price might actually be quite different. But the biggest problem is that while a global cost curve of various proportions of supply, and you work out what is the oil price needed for this group of companies to make just a 10% return, which is what companies in industry release. Obviously, they target something higher, but ultimately they end up with a 10% return, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, or 100 years. This industry typically falls down to that number. Russia, as I've highlighted here, is up in the $90 per barrel level. So it's we're $106 oil prices today. Allows you to make a bit of excess return, but it also tells you the threat to this amount of production should prices decline, which is what we're just discussing this morning, is something that investors, equity investors, actually believe today. Not as high cost as some of the U.S. conventionals or the Canadian oil sands on the right-hand side of this cost curve. But it's not just the whole cost structure, as you know, and I'm sure many of you are aware, it is the tax regime that's particularly harsh in Russia. The top chart is just breaking it out for you. Out of $106 Brent today on the black line, $51 simply goes on the export duty. So to get your oil from West Siberia out into the Mediterranean, out into Northwest Europe, you have to give the government half that oil price. And another $20 for the right to extract it, so that's $19. So there's good $70 going directly to the government. The cost structure underneath that isn't actually that bad. Production costs of $3 are very, very low. The Western integrated oil companies will be $11 to $15 on that particular metric. Transportation is a big cost. It's a big distance. It's a big country. $8 to get it across the Urals and to get out into the market, etc. And I think the big debate we always have is, will the government ever start reducing the 51 or the 19.4? And that's a holy grail. On one hand, it's a catch-22. You can't do it because they're so reliant on these tax revenues. I always look at the bottom chart, which is the health of Russia in terms of its reserves, its funds, what it has to prop it up in terms of a rainy day. And I think the last year or so, they've just been building up their entire reserve base to $175 billion. So it's moving in the right direction. If you remember back here, this is when they did have close to $250 billion in excess, and they were going to bail out Iceland, and they were going to do a lot of good during the kind of global recession. But then subsequently, Russia's economy dropped as well, and that really told you there's a very low chance of eliminating these tax breaks. All I'm pointing to here is that the rainy day funds have been improving, but I'm not saying that's a kind of precursor yet to any near-term reduction in terms of this fiscal take. So I think it's harsh, and I think it's probably going to stay harsh for at least the medium term. But that's kind of fiscal and the money side of it. I mean, what about the rocks? What about the fields? Well, an interesting way to plot the production is like this. And the black line is just the average age of the average Russian barrel. And as you can imagine, it's increasingly from fields which become older and older every single year. So the average barrel today is produced from a field which is over 30 years old. And the green bars are just saying how much production is coming from fields that are young fields. So there's like 12% in the green coming from fields less than 10 years old. So clearly they need a lot of new fields in order to get this number up. And we'll look at that in a couple of slides' time in terms of exploration performance. But this is why I think it's so challenging. We're just increasingly producing from older and older fields. And if you take that a step further and you really look at the productivity per well, so this is average production per well on the y-axis and the water cup. So the older they get, the greater the water breakthrough, and you can plot it like this. the log scale. There is some trend here, as you can see. We're dropping 1,000 barrels per day to less than 100 barrels per day as the water cut goes up naturally. But a lot of these fields, the blue diamonds are 2011. So as we gravitate over to the right, we're up to like 90% water cut. And naturally, every well is producing is doing 60, 70 barrels per day. Companies are trying to mitigate that, and again, if you plot it in terms of new wells drilled on the y-axis year over year, so the growth and number of new wells every year, and you go out to this area again of the high water cut territory, and you can see that they're adding wells to this production area where the water cut is high. So they're trying to mitigate it, adding new wells, trying to bring out more production, despite the fact that it is very low barrels per well. But that's a procedure, that's a practice, that's what's happening today. I mean, this production is about really running to stand still when we take a look at the granularity down below the top line numbers. And again, I think this is just an interesting way to think about some of these fields in Russia today. Again, it's just production in thousands of barrels per day on the y-axis and the total wells drilled to get to that production. So we just come across, let's say, the 100,000 barrel per day line here, 2/3 way up this chart, and we come across to the number of wells in these various territories to deliver 100,000 barrels per day. The black circles over here are Lukoil's major fields in West Siberia, and I'm really highlighting that you need sometimes 500 up to like a couple of thousand wells to be producing just 100,000 barrels per day output per field. And as you go right to left, you can see in Norway it kind of takes, let's say, about 100 wells to get there. Gulf of Mexico, 20, 30. And then some of the resource that I like most is the Santos Basin in Brazil. You get 100,000 barrels a day from 4 wells from some of this new offshore resource in the Santos Basin. So very, very different unit economics naturally as a consequence. But again, Russia looks particularly challenging whenever we strip this data out. And that, Brazil and places like that are naturally about the volumes per well per day. And that's just another way to look at it. The blues down here are just some of the typical barrels per day from the Russian wells versus, again, Gulf of Mexico, UK, Brazil, Iranian fields, Canadian offshore fields. We're definitely at a kind of low end of the spectrum here, which is one of the root problems. We need a new resource type. We need something that's much higher productivity given this harsh fiscal regime. And then you come up against the never-ending headwind facing everyone in certainly producing oil is decline rates. And this is simply taking the entire 2,000 fields that we have in Russia. I'm just telling you about the decline rates inherent within that production base. So every day, companies have to try and stay flat, and they have to use CapEx to do that. And really, the numbers turn out here. If we take the median number here, about 6.5% decline rate. So that's what we've calculated. It's not as hot. I mean, that's the kind of the interesting thing. When you're offshore, as you know, it's double digit. Here in Russia, it's about 6.5%. Some of the lower quartile fields do get to double-digit decline rates, 15% a year. And again, that's adding pressure to certain companies operating within this industry. But overall, I think that's that's maybe one mild positive here versus some of the offshore basins. The other interesting thing about the Russian fields in general is just how long they take to ramp up. And again, I like to focus on, we've done a lot of work in these 4 areas, Norway, the UK, Gulf of Mexico, and Russia on the top chart. And I mean, this is more petroleum engineering, but you can see Norway, UK, Gulf of Mexico on the top chart, naturally they ramp up very quickly within 1 or 2 years, and then they start their decline. The typical field in Russia is just much, much slower. That's onshore. It can take a decade to ramp up to peak production, and then it starts to decline. But what that means in the bottom chart is that naturally, the dotted line again means it takes you a lot longer to get your oil out of your field. And that's what companies are chasing, the value per barrel. You want to get your oil out quickly, you want to get it out soon to maximize offshore fields. You can get in Norway, UK, and Mexico, where we're ramping up to 100% within a decade in those regions. And as you can see, you can take like 40 or 50 years to do the same thing in terms of Russia. That's not, from an investment proposition, that's not attractive. And in fact, if you take that step further and say, what is, every dollar I put in, what am I going to get back? On the left-hand side is those offshore basins. You're going to make a healthy return. You're going to make $3 in Norway, $6 in the UK, 6 in the Gulf of Mexico, an offshore average of 5. And if you just take that simple production profile for Russian fields without the harsh fiscal regime, it would ultimately give you $3 or your $1 invested. And if you slap on the existing tax regime today, you can see it's less than $1 for that dollar you're actually investing. So again, this is why I think I see some Russian companies stepping out of Russia, trying to build up international businesses, international portfolios. Just the attractiveness of applying more capex and cash into brownfield Russia just doesn't stack up. And from my side of the fence, we have to explain to investors, and back to David's question about the appetite for companies to list on AIM, focused on FSU. Well, the equity market bases the value on the barrels each company has, and the one axis is that market value in millions, and the barrels here in kind of millions of barrels on the x-axis. And this is a whole range of global oil companies plotting across this quite close correlation here. And I've just highlighted, some of the Russian companies, Gazprom, Rosneft, Gazprom, Surgut, all kind of trading at a discount or trading away from the best fit of that line. That's hard to do with the value of those barrels. They're just not as attractive as an international portfolio. So the market gets it right and adjusts for that whenever they're considering which company do you put into your portfolio. So what are the Russian companies doing? Yes, there's all the politics, which I know Julian's going to speak about afterwards, but do they have to invest? Are they being told to invest, etc.? But the data tells you that it is becoming more capital intensive in Russia. So upstream capex is rising strongly in the last 6 years, up to $50 billion a year across the companies on the top chart. Or the red dotted line is the capex per barrel produced. So it's now taking $6 per barrel to produce that incremental barrel, and that used to be a $2 number just like 6-7 years ago. So again, that's a measure of capital efficiency, and it's going the wrong direction. And then I guess a bit hard to see all these labels on the bottom chart, but all the cost elements are rising within Russia as well. It's a little bit more self-contained industry. It has its own oil service universe. It's not quite all the kind of prices you would see internationally, but they're all, whether you're looking at workovers to horizontal wells to the cost to drill an incremental meter, all of them have things moving up, as you've seen in the early side of the oil service sector. So this is again acting against them. So that's production, and again, whenever we look at it, looks tough. It does look tough, and I think the growth has been there. But I still think that things like Glencore, things like Gazprom are kind of flattering the top line numbers, and underneath it's much more challenging. And I still expect that to become more visible over the next couple of years. The only way to mitigate against that is obviously to be boasting some large and more economical exploration successes. But again, this will feed back into politics. There's just, again, no appetite out there for this industry to walk and explore it yet, or at least in the last 15, 20 years. This is the trend of exploration, 2P proven and probable discoveries, all the way back to the peaks in the 1960s, right up to 2012, and you can see the trend. So it hasn't stepped up yet. Maybe that's going to add some pressure here. Maybe we see this coming through. There certainly should be some low-hanging fruit out there. The Western integrated oil companies are moving in the last year and a half. They're moving in for exploration. So this could change. But at the moment, the reason the production is going up in the black line is just coming from those legacy brownfield assets and just again, just to show you FSU discoveries just in the last 3 years, in terms of the global discovery, I've plotted it like this. Plotted Russia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan in the boxes, and the circles kind of most proximal to those labels show you the volume discovered. And then this is around the world. This side is all gas, this side is all oil. And below the x-axis is offshore, and above it is kind of onshore. So most of Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan discoveries have been natural gas, so we're going to have to get that out into Europe somehow, or across into China. So you can imagine how long that's going to take. In Russia, the discoveries in the last 3 years have been about 50-50, 50% oil, 50% gas. So again, you have companies talking about monetizing natural gas more aggressively in Russia, but half of it's oil. It's not a big volume, especially when you look at some of the oil discoveries that have been made internationally, like Norway, like Brazil, like Angola, Ghana, etc., etc. So even when we map this globally, it isn't suddenly appearing to us like there's a lot of excess discoveries to kind of put into the pipeline. So again, that's a little bit disappointing here. But what are the opportunities? Where can they take this? I mean, the big one naturally is technology. Everyone asks about it, everyone focuses on it. There's a mature market here that will benefit from technology. It's not the first time it's been introduced over the last 10, 12 years. Incrementally, it's been added right way back to, I'm sure some of you remember the SIDNET, the UCOS days, when the US oil service companies came in with Schlumberger and kind of using horizontal wells and fracks. And ultimately, some of these things were working. You were getting an extra 3,000 to 4,000 barrels per day per well from these various pieces or strands of technology. And that kind of built it all the way through into 2006. It kind of dried up a little bit from what we can track through the recession, but 2011, 2012, a bit more of it coming through Rosneft, TNK before. So I think this is really what the low-hanging fruit. This is the easiest thing I think Russia can do in terms of the short term, absent going after exploration. And I think, the water cut management, TNKBP, if anyone knows them, they've always focused on this, and I think it's right, because if you do plot the year-over-year change in production on the y-axis, and again, this change in water cut on the x-axis, there's some causality here, some relationship between the higher your water cut, the lower your production is going to be over the next 12 months. So if you can improve your water cut, then you can have a greater chance of growing your production. I think that's one big area of focus that I would like to see a lot of work going towards. Brownfield activity, drilling wells, well, they're doing it. They're adding wells into these brownfield areas, trying to fight back the rise in water cuts. When we look at that, how successful that activity is, what we're just plotting here on the top chart is how many wells, what's the change in production again on the y-axis versus the number of wells drilled. So if we drill 0 to 5 wells, we're still falling 3.9 or 4% year over year. So that's not enough. If we double that number of wells up to 5 to 10, still not enough. We're still declining 1% from all of that additional well stock. We really need to get up to like 7 to 12 wells, that sort of range, to really turn around the field performance. And that's just what we have actually recorded and seen in a lot of these fields. That's a lot of work, because when you put that in context of the other basins that we track very closely, again, you'll see blue is Russia here, and Russia is just turning positive here when you go 5+ wells, whereas in the Gulf of Mexico or UK North Sea, you can add 3 wells to a field and you can actually turn around that production. So again, somebody trying to make a decision about where to put their money and where to add an incremental well in terms of maintenance capex profile, you can see where it's naturally actually going to gravitate. So horizontal fracking, horizontal drilling, multi-stage fracking, it's the thing du jour, and obviously everyone's talking about it. Russia is not, it's not uncommon in Russia. Multi-stage hydrofracturing is, but horizontal drilling and fracturing has been used. What we're doing here is trying to replicate or trying to illustrate the benefits or learning curves that they witnessed from adding new wells, horizontal wells, sidetracks, hydrofracturing wells, and what did that do to the average flow rate per well through that select piece of technology. And you will see it kind of ramp up to a peak in all of these 4 areas of activity, and then it was pretty hard to replicate that peak again. So kind of very natural learning curve that you might see in any type of industry. So I think that it's going to be tough to just go after these categories. It's really going to need this US, so-called technology. You're going to need to drill your, 10,000 feet horizontals and your 25 to 30 fracturing episodes and really push it out to see if that can lift production. So, and then naturally, I think all of those things are big. There's a big prize from all of them. The unconventionals, again, is becoming very topical here today. And, you can look at various estimates. This is, one way to look at it about the kind of source rock boilers that might be in place in terms of some of these source rocks, and depict it like this and take a look at the world, and you can see where this Bashanov, which sits in West Siberia, it is source rock for pretty much 90% of West Siberian crude, and you can't miss it on this chart. So it's a big area of focus, and companies are naturally moving into it as well. So to take a bird's eye view to show you the scale of that again versus some of these successful shale plays that you're hearing about. So you'll maybe heard about the Bakken here in North Dakota or the Eagle Ford. But 2.3 million square kilometers of potential here in this national oil shale formation. And there's a couple of intervals that the companies are investigating at the moment. I mean, this could go either way. It's very early. Naturally, if it works, it's got serious implications for the oil price, but it is very early. So, one thing we have to do is try and stay ahead of the curve and get out there and take a look and see, is it going to collapse the oil price? And this is just a trip we did recently to West Siberia. This is Khanty-Mansiysk in the center of West Siberia. I just want a couple of photographs here to show you how tough. I'm sure you've seen photographs of the US and the pad drilling and moving rigs around and equipment and infrastructure, and generally the relative ease that it is to do that in North America. It's just illustrative to look at some photographs here and think about how repeatable is it going to be in West Siberia. So this is this oil town and kind of where it's situated across all the river systems. Sorry.
I want to do it.
So this is just further back from the aircraft, just to give you a sense, of a typical oil-prone area in West Siberia. It's not all like this, but this is, one of the most interesting places to go visit. Moving equipment around. So this is like equipment being pushed on a barge here in the River Obe through West Siberia. One of the big ways to move equipment around. So it's not demobilizing a rig, putting it on the back of the big US trucks and kind of doing the truck journeys that are very common in North America. This is going into this well pad where they drilled one of these Bashanov shale wells recently. So this is coming into, and again, it's just, think about the trees in the back of the photograph, think about the rivers, think about the site clearance that was required here. This is getting closer and closer, and this is a Bashanov well, a testing site, just a couple of weeks ago. So the well's down in the lower left-hand corner. There's 6 producers along here, and there's a storage tank in the center as well. So, it's a very modest affair here for this first Bashanov, one of the first Bashanov tests. Now it is producing, so there's some evidence it's real. They do have oil, and it's been flowing really well, 600 barrels per day for the past 2 months, which is a pretty, that's what you find on average in kind of North Dakota. So nothing wrong with that. It's light sweet crude. You turn on the tap and you can fill a bucket. But it's also interesting. I mean, the scale is different. I mean, this is this Bashanov in the lower left. Apologies about the quality of that, and there's just a representative job in the US, versus kind of the frac fleet, the trucks that are required to pump the water down into the wells versus what what's happening today in Russia. So again, there will be, if this works, we're going to have to get the whole equipment side of this exploratory effort up. But the interesting thing is, we're not quite ready to jump and say, okay, they've cracked the code, the Bashanov shale is coming, because it's a bit more, it's not actually drilling into the type shale, fracturing it. So it's a bit more using geophysics, so they're using 3D seismic, they're mapping it onto these fault block structure maps, and they're identifying all of these fault points, and they're just coming up with an array, 30 to 60 of these, and pinpointing these. So you drill into natural fractures, quite large ones, big 1,000-kilometer length, and naturally when you drill into that, you're getting some pretty interesting flow rates coming out. So the problem with that is, how repeatable is it? It's not the manufacturing process that we see in North America. It will be going across all of these red dots, and if you run out of these, then ultimately the production will stop. So I think it's just be careful that if you think, oh, Russia's cracked their shale, it's not quite cracking the code as we like to talk about it. But it does make sense, at least these types of wells make a lot of sense. So, I mean, Shell and Gazprom are the ones that are doing this. This is just trying to work out, again, that value per barrel from that investment. And, you know, at whatever, $190, $100 oil price in the y-axis, what is the net present value? What's the return I'm going to get from doing this type of investment? And it's 4.5. So, positive, it's certainly worthwhile doing. The government may even provide some tax reductions for this type of drilling in the Bashanov. If they were to slash that mineral extraction tax just by 40%, suddenly you go up to $7.7 million for a return from your investment. So it's very reliant on kind of fiscal take, on the geopolitics, which you'll hear about next, in order to see a lot of appetite for this type of drilling. So I'm going to just close up there and just say, yeah, I mean, our data says the growth is challenging, increasingly capital intensive. Top line numbers don't quite tell the true picture. Exploration is insufficient given the resource size in this country or this region. Technology has been tried, but we need to take the next iteration of that. It is desperately needed. And, you know, unconventional and then shale tight. Merge those two words together. It works in theory, but political support is needed. And I'm going to leave that to Julian to talk about the geopolitics. So thank you very much, and I'll take your questions.
Just one question here, and then we really ought to let all the steps for the airport. Please.
Alistair Stone from Zoltan Resources. I'd like to challenge us with your data set and the application of it. You're taking a vast range of old oil fields, all of which were discovered during the Soviet period and financed during the Soviet period and now being extracted during our period, and applying it to the incremental value that can be got from a company looking at a new field. If you were to, for example, put a saline field up against the statistics there, I think you would get an entirely different NPV, something that's closer to $5 a barrel rather than the 0.7. So, I think the extrapolation looks great for Rosneft, Lukoil, and the rest of all falls off the chart. But for a new company going into a new field, of which there are almost none because they were all discovered sometime previously, I think the economics aren't 0.7 bucks a barrel. They are 3 to 5, depending upon the take.
Yeah, I mean, Saline's a good example, a very good example. And you're right, the fiscal take is sufficient to make that. And I mean, TNK, I think, showed it beautifully around those big Soviet fields and the low-hanging fruit they extracted and focused on water cut, and naturally that's all through the BP technology. That's my favorite example of how to make it work. So you're right, it can work, but it's the appetite. And small companies get burned in Russia, right? And then companies they lose their appetite to go back. They find it challenging, and you need those smaller, nimble companies to go in and do it and target those returns you're talking about. But a lot of them suffer challenges and lose their appetite to go back, at least in my experience. The big guys are going back, as I said, but I wonder about medium cap, small cap companies, how many of them can come in here and bring on the next Celine. That's the other outside view that I see. But the value is there, yes.
The other small point I'd like to make is you mentioned 4 wells in Brazil producing 100,000 barrels a day. I think that's about, let's call that $240 million of capex to put those 4 wells in. If you took the Saline example again, just because those numbers are recent and obvious and mostly without corruption, that's 120 wells for the same number. I think that 100 barrels a day from a well, you're looking at a similar production.
Yeah, but I guess the only thing about Brazil is we're at T1 in the learning curve. That's $240 million. I mean, it used to take 160 days to drill the wells in Brazil. They're targeting 35 days at the end of this year. That's $1 million a day. We're really bringing down that cost structure dramatically as well.
If you're Petrobras.
Yeah.
We better let you go then. Thank you all. Oh,
Slides on the website, all right?
Yes, yes.
yeah, okay. Okay, well, let's turn it on from the station. The question I asked you just then was